listening to Package Your Genius, a conversation designed to give you clarity on your calling and serve as a catalyst for your career. I'm your host, Amanda Miller Littlejohn. Welcome back to another episode of Package Your Genius. I am pumped up today. The weather is actually not that warm, but it's sunny, and I think the sun is the biggest thing for me. I am feeling excited and powerful and ready for the next season that's just around the corner. Do you realize that it is the last week of Q1? You know, you may be listening to this sometime later in the year or later in my podcasting journey, but this episode is being recorded near the end of March 2019. And so it seems like only yesterday we were looking at our goals for the year, and I certainly was looking at the goals I was setting for Q1. And so it's exciting to reflect on all the traction that I've gotten and you've gotten, as well as what we need to pick up the pace on and do to ensure that we can close the quarter strong. So I'm really excited about staying true to some of my goals, one of which is launching my new PR mastermind, Maximum Exposure, which is happening in just a couple of weeks. I'm so excited to get to work with new students and my awesome new team. Well, they're not a new team, but I guess we're newly configured for this particular program. But these are all people I've known for forever, and I know they're awesome at doing PR. So it's going to be amazing. But I wanted to drop into your earbuds today and just really give you a kick in the butt, because I keep having conversations with people around personal branding and visibility and getting out there. And I just feel like all of us are really overthinking visibility and missing valuable opportunities day in and day out to get in front of our people. So if you've been listening to the last few episodes I've done of Package Your Genius, you may have noticed that I've been focusing primarily on how to get visibility through media outreach. And I've been focusing on that because media has brought so much to me. Like, I can't even really say or quantify, because I probably don't even know all of the gifts that the media exposure I've gotten has brought me. But just, when I think about it, it's really opened doors to audiences that I never would have personally been able to access on my own, or maybe I would have, but it would have taken a ton of groundwork and networking and just connecting with people all over the world versus, through an interview. So for example, I recently had a conversation with Freddie Mac, the corporation, and they wanted to talk about bringing me in to do a corporate talk at their headquarters for a big event they're hosting. And the woman who reached out, or one of the women who kind of put my name in the ring, saw me or heard me on a radio interview that I did on WTOP recently about rebranding and getting yourself together for a career change. So I'm like, okay, well, we don't really operate or move in the same circle. So I think it's interesting that she found me that way. And then also, I was recently talking to an applicant to Package Your Genius Academy, and they mentioned that they first encountered me 3 years ago listening to Sirius Radio when I was doing a series of interviews on the business channel at Wharton, and I was talking about personal branding, and they always liked me, and I think they got on my list at that point and started following my work. And when the timing came for this particular woman to consider personal branding, I was the person that was on her radar and on her mind, and she'd kind of been building that digital relationship with me by following me since those interviews, which is just so powerful, right? And so that's why I've been harping so much on media, simply because I love it. And I think that it is extremely powerful to get in front of people who don't already know you. But that's not the point of this podcast episode. I wanted just to talk about overthinking it. So for me, even with those interviews I just mentioned, they were not like groundbreaking, earth shattering, new insights that I had about personal branding or about myself even. I just took what I always talk about with my clients. I pulled out the high level bullets and I shared those bullets with the journalist. So, it's not rocket science. It's totally doable for anyone who actually has expertise that they're sharing on a regular basis, which I'm sure you are. If you're employed, if you have clients, if you are receiving income or revenue of any kind, somebody's finding value in you and what you do. So there's something to talk about related to the value you're already providing the world. So even though for me, those interviews were super easy and they were not complicated, earth-shattering, insights that I shared, I feel like people are still missing that connection between how we all have information we are sharing and we are kind of spreading all over the world, but people aren't making the connection that, okay, I can just take this additional step and take the things that I'm already sharing and get them out to a lot more people. And so we're just overthinking it. So I wanted to talk you through how you can basically repurpose a lot of the work that you're already doing to get traction for your brand. So I have 5 different things that you could potentially be repurposing in a few different ways, just to get your mind thinking and the wheels turning about how you may be missing opportunities, and how with just some simple tweaks and just adding this to your to-do list and your calendar, you can start to get more exposure for what you're already doing, right? So that's the point, like not to reinvent the wheel, not to make a ton of new work for yourself or try to figure out something new that you can talk about. But how do we gain traction for the things we're already thinking, the ideas we're already having, the, tips and strategies we're already sharing, the genius we already have? How do we get more traction for that? So here are 5 things that you may, or 5 places rather, that you can find genius to repurpose to maximize the visibility and really get more bang for your brand, right? So the first thing that you may be able to repurpose are your client sessions, right? So if you are a coach or consultant and you find yourself in one-on-one sessions with clients, typically those clients are walking away with gems, with great insights and tips and strategies that they are then using to transform their lives or their businesses. But the thing about working with clients one-on-one is that the insights are kind of frozen in that session, right? That one person gets tremendous value and they can have a breakthrough. But if no one else was in the room and no one else heard the insights you shared, it doesn't go very far in terms of impact. So yes, it impacts that person, and depending on who they are and who they touch, it could continue to ripple and impact more people. But in terms of the benefit you get brand wise, it's only impacting that one person. So that's why I always tell people to start with the sessions they're delivering to one-on-one clients and pull out the nuggets that they're sharing. Obviously you're not going to talk about your client, especially if you have some confidentiality issues. So you're not talking about them specifically, but you may be able to share lessons that are applicable to that client, but applicable to a wider audience of people who may be in a similar situation in the form of media interviews. So you could pitch the tips from client sessions to media interviews. You could pitch the tips you pull from your client sessions to be podcast episodes. You could tell stories from your client interactions in those client sessions, in your newsletter articles, and then you could write kind of like a didactic story / tip roundup and submit that as a guest post for a major website. So you can take a client session and flip it 4 ways. So I'll share those ways again: media interviews, podcast episodes, newsletter articles, or guest post submissions. And then I'll also say blog posts. So that's 5 ways. I think newsletter articles and blog posts, I kind of think of them being almost the same because I typically will post my newsletter on my blog. So that's number 1, client sessions. Number 2, so if you take really detailed session notes, you may start to see themes coming out in the session notes as you record the strategies or the ideas that you are compiling for your clients. And you can repurpose session notes into worksheets, so blank worksheets for new clients or blank worksheets for people on your email list. You could repurpose them eventually, if you have maybe a few different categories of worksheets, into workbooks that you can then sell or make, the curriculum for a conference. Actually, that's an additional way that I didn't even write down. So worksheets, workbooks, conference curriculum. You can put your session notes into a book, right? So if you start to compile lots of session notes and realize, okay, I've got all of this information around a topic, maybe that's a book. And then obviously if you've got enough information for a book, you also have enough information for an online course. And so you can repurpose session notes for an online course as well. And number 3, so let me recap number 2. So 2, session notes can be turned into worksheets, workbooks, conference curriculum, a book, or a course. Number 3, speaking engagements, talks. So like if you are being invited to speak and share, I've got like a million keynote decks, PowerPoint decks on my computer. You can take those decks and turn them into, the high level talking points for your media interviews and media pitches. You can turn your decks into book outlines and books once again. You can look at your deck and potentially pull out the modules for a course. So if you're doing a lot of public speaking and again, you're getting in front of 100 people or 1,000 people, that's great. That's way better than just talking to one person. But imagine if you could take that same information and package it into a format that could reach even more people and could reach people beyond that moment, right? So the thing about speaking is, yes, it's scalable, but unless you've recorded the talk, it's ephemeral, right? And that's the same way I feel about like one-on-one client sessions. They're very impactful to that individual, but they disappear in the moment unless they're recorded, right? And so my goal for people is to package things into permanence, right? And so when you're doing a talk, if it's not being recorded and you're not going to have a video of your talk, you definitely want to package it to permanence and turn that into a media segment where you kind of share the same points from that talk, a book where you go even deeper into the points that you made in the talk, and then of course a course, an online course, or even it doesn't have to be online, it could be an in-person course where you teach people in a deeper way and over a longer period of time the principles that you shared in your talk. Number 4. So if you've ever done anything like a telesummit or a virtual conference, and I thought of this after doing my first virtual PR conference in early March, the Maximum Exposure Virtual PR Conference, I did a series of interviews with experts in journalism and media, and essentially realized that, okay, if you can generate a ton of video content in one sitting, you can turn that into a few podcast episodes. You could extract the audio and turn those interviews into podcast episodes. You could turn those into course content, and you could also begin to build your initial library for a membership site. So if you're running a mastermind program, and you're inviting people to enroll in this longer experience, upon enrollment, if it's the very beginning of the program, people want to be able to do something, learn something, watch something, read something to kind of onboard themselves into the experience of working with you. And the challenge with starting a new membership site is, if you haven't started to teach the content to your very first members, you may not have anything in your membership site, and the membership site is kind of barren, right? And so you kind of feel bad because people are paying, but they're only getting that first level of live content that you're producing. And so if you do a content series or a virtual conference like the Maximum Exposure PR virtual conference that I did, you can quickly, take those videos and put them into your membership site, right? And so you're starting off with a bank of content for the people who are ready to invest in your new program, and you've taken it down. So like I did was I made the conference free, but it's not available forever, right? So you can register and watch the conference for free, and you have a couple of days to watch the replay, but those videos are taken down to live in the membership site for the paid members of the Maximum Exposure PR program. But that's a cool way to repurpose content series. So that's the fourth thing that you may have. And then the fifth and final thing that we all have. So even if you're not running a business or coaching clients, you have a job and people ask you for your advice all the time. So I want you to think about the frequently asked questions that you get from people at work, from people in your business, from clients, from customers, the frequently asked questions that relate to your expertise and how you solve problems. And then how can you, once you've made a list of those frequently asked questions, how can you repurpose your answers into visibility opportunities for your brand? So the first way you could do it is a blog post. So you could simply kind of do a roundup, a listicle, your top tips for whatever those questions kind of fall under the umbrella of. You could do, again, another media pitch to share your top tips for this specific content area. You could package your frequently asked questions again into a book, right? You could package your frequently asked questions into your personal story and keynote, right? So share your personal story, but then maybe share the 7 questions you hear the most. People are always intrigued by numbers because they want to know, do they know the answers to the questions? Do they have all 5 tips? Are they using all 7 suggestions? So numbers are always fun that way. But the last way that you could repackage or repurpose your advice or responses to frequently asked questions is your first signature coaching session. So that was what I did when I first started out and decided, okay, people can no longer get my brain power and pick my brain for a cup of coffee. I thought about all of the things that I was asked the most, and then I kind of created a signature session that addressed those questions, and I put a price tag on it. And so for you, if you are always getting the same 10 questions or the same 5 questions, take those questions and really think deeply about your best responses. The times when you've given this advice and it worked really well, and it worked really well consistently. So you gave the advice 10 times, and 8 out of 10 times when people implemented what you told them, it worked amazingly. So just take that advice and kind of have those answers in your back pocket as the framework for how you solve this challenge, and put a price tag on that session and offer people 60 to 90 minutes or more with you to help talk them through the solution. So those are 5 places you can look for content to repurpose to get more visibility for your brand. And again, we want to take things that are ephemeral and ethereal and are happening and disappearing and only happening in the moment, and we want to record them so that people in the future can get access to our advice and to our genius and can be aware of how they can work with us. So I hope you found these tips helpful. If you did, shout me out on social media, #PackageYourGenius. I'm on Package Your Genius on Instagram, and I'm all over the place. So shout me out and let me know which one of these tips you are going to use. All right, I'll see you next time.